Let's cover a little control column rebuild. So here's a picture of my control column as it was still installed in the fuselage. And here it is removed from the aircraft. And this is looking from the front of the aircraft towards the aft. And this is the side of the column that you would see if you were sitting in the pilot seat. Now in this picture you can see the universal joint at the bottom that connects to the yoke itself, and in the top is the pulley where the aileron cable goes through, and you can see a ball in the aileron cable that is held in place with cotter pins. Now this is just a shot I took to make sure that I get the proper routing of the aileron cables from the yoke pulleys to the pulleys that transition the cable down towards the floor. After removing the universal joints and the aileron cable pulleys, there are these bushings, and I had to pull those bushings out so that I could clean and powder coat the control column. Here's a picture of those bushings after they've been removed. Now where the control column connects to the fuselage, there are also some bearings that had to be pressed out. So while the control column was out being powder coated, I decided to try out the new sandblaster, and the pulley on the left has been sandblasted and the one on the right was original as it came out of the airplane. Next, a little coat of primer, and I cleaned up all the bearings, bushings, and universal joints. So this is an interesting thing that I noticed. My control column had the bushings in it that are at the top of this picture. But I had another control column that came with my airplane, and I believe it was out of a straight 108. And it actually had a bearing where the aileron pulley and the universal joint went through. So there were two bearings on either side, not a bushing. So that was an interesting thing. I'm going to keep the bushing. It was what was in there and seemed to work fine. But it's just one of those things that during a restoration or a rebuild that you notice. This is the control column as it got back from powder coating. It looks awesome. And here are the cleaned bushings just before installing them. And now we're installing those bushings. And that's how the final product looks. Next, it's time to install the aileron pulleys with a little bit of grease. And finally, the universal joints. Now I'll have to go and get some new hardware to bolt the universal joints to the aileron pulleys. It's coming together. Got the hardware in for the universal joints. Also reinstalled the bearings at the lower end of the column where they attach to the fuselage. And there it is, installed in the fuselage. And now on to the next project, installing the rudder pedals.